So we're throwing a bottle that starts with a cylinder, so if you've been having cylinder issues still, this is reviewing those steps. So coning up and compressing down. And then you can see my hand is wobbling as I'm near the bottom. Make sure that you're spending a little extra time in the bottom until that feels like that bottom part is centered, and then start to walk your way up.
And what do you do about the clumps that are still kind of at the bottom?
The clumps that are still at the bottom, I will try, while I'm centering, to push, like if I'm early in the process, I'll try to push them back in, you know, so just by compressing here. But after I cone up and compress down a couple times, if they're still there, I'll usually take my thumbnail and just do that undercut to redefine the bottom. And that's, if my hand is steady or my tool is steady when I'm doing that, that should be pretty close to center then. So again, let your hands sit down at the bottom for a minute and get established, and then you can move on, and that should help pretty much.
How much clay should you use when throwing a bottle?
Depends on what size bottle you want to make, but remember, we're always aiming for that 6-inch cylinder or more. So I'm going to say go for grapefruit size or a little bit larger. So once your clay is centered, I'm going to drop the hole. And remember, if your lump of clay is kind of bigger and you can't just get your fingers down there, you're going to do your whole hand.
And you're going gradually and you're not just sticking
I'm
your
not
fingers straight.
shoving my fingers down there. I'm being patient. There's a certain ratio with the speed of the wheel and the amount of pressure you apply, and the softness of your clay even factors into it. But if you're being mindful, you'll kind of realize that the clay just, it gives with your hands if you're using the right amount of pressure and the right speed. If you feel like you're forcing your fingers down there, ease your pressure off and be patient. Let the rotation of the wheel help you out. So I'm gonna check my bottom depth. Again, I want that to be about 3/8 of an inch. So I'm at about a 1/2 inch. I can go a little bit more. And remember, keep it on center. Don't touch the clay when the wheel's not moving. Get your wheel moving before you go back down to touching it. Okay, so I'm going to define the bottom. I'm going to do a flat bottom. And I'm doing a cylinder, so I'm going to start to open my form up, or basically move up. Now that my cylinder's open, I can go back down into the bottom, compress it, make sure it's nice and flat, get any excess standing water out of the bottom. I know somebody asked, they said that when I throw with a sponge, you can't see my fingers. So here's my fingers. Starting to apply light pressure between them, and then I'm going to move up. So you can see it's just my fingertips, and even though my first finger, it's kind of above where that ridge is, first finger isn't really applying any pressure. It's that second finger, and it's kind of being supported by the third finger.
And what if you're still having problems with staying stable as you're going up, as just keeping it even?
Make sure that your elbows are tucked into your body. All right, so now I'm returning to my sponge because I need it. So you can see that ring that's going up. I've got that's where my fingers on the inside are. My fingers on the outside are right below where that ring is. And because I'm doing a cylinder, I'm going up, and I'm actually moving slightly towards my left shoulder. So that means I'm applying a little bit more pressure with the hand that's on the outside so that my form is going in and not out. You can see I gave my pressure up a little bit right there. I'm gonna go ahead and collar that just so it's, and this is the, like as we've been doing cylinders, I've been stressing, make sure that your neck is smaller than your base. Bottles, this is gonna be super important because we wanna make sure that we're able to get that neck to collar in. So I'll do one more pull here, I think. And if that rim is flaring out, it's going to be difficult to get it to collar in without the clay wrinkling. Switch my hand position. Okay. I'm compressing my rim as I go along in the process. I'm going to get excess water out of the bottom. And now I'll start shaping my form. I'm going to clean this bottom up here. So starting at the bottom and slowly moving up, pushing outward. Go back to the bottom. And remember, every step in the throwing process, slow down just a little bit. So shaping, I'm going slower than when I was pulling my walls up. And you don't have to go all the way back to the bottom. If you want to shape just one section, just start your fingers just a little bit under where you want it to be, get your fingers comfortable, and then start to move up and apply pressure as you move up. Okay, so I have basically a lovely vase form. I need to make my neck smaller. If I do that now, I don't have the opportunity to get the water out of the bottom. So I'm gonna do that now. I'm gonna take my sponge, wring it out, make sure it's nice and dry, and then I'm gonna put my hand in there, and I'm gonna get all that water out, and I'm gonna compress the bottom one last time. And I'm gonna look in there and make sure that it's dry. If you want to go in and do any cleaning of the form or shaping with your rib, now's the time to do that. And now I'm going to start to do my collaring. So remember collaring using this part of your hand, and you're just going to start below where you want to apply pressure to make it smaller, get your fingers settled, and then start to squeeze and move up. Ease your pressure off. Go back and do a light pull. And what you're going to find is if your neck is really thick, it's going to be hard to collar. If your neck is also really thin, it's going to be really hard to collar. So you got to get kind of a balanced width of wall. So collaring and moving up. Collaring and moving up. About every 2 pulls, I'm going to go back and do a little, after every 2 collarings, I'm going to go back and do a little pull. It helps to thin that out and prevents it from moving. So if you've forgotten at this point to take water out of the bottom, you go, oh, I forgot that step. It's not too late. We have sponges that are on sticks that you can put down in there to get the water out, and those are usually over by the calipers. You can keep going. I mean, you can get this really, really super narrowed. I want you to think about design and how the piece looks. I think that the straight neck, it's not doing too much for the form. I think that this needs to flare open. So I'm just going to go back in, and with my finger on the inside of the pot, I'm just pulling out slightly. Now when you are collaring and you get a really narrow neck, what's going to happen? Another question I got was, how come one side of my wall is higher than the other? That's because your pot went off center at some point. So you can't really fix it at this stage, but you can make it look fixed by taking your needle tool and cutting your rim. So remember, it's left finger's like they're pinching, right hand is holding onto your needle tool, and you're going to push it down until it touches the finger on the other side. Make sure it rotates all around, and then lift up. And you want to choose a point that's below the lowest point. Okay, so and I'll just go back and do a little bit more shaping. So there, now I've got a bottle. You can throw a cork in it, you can put handles on it, whatever the case may be.